I'm Chris Sunnucks, and I'm the 7th funniest guy in church, depending on who you talk to. I actually grew up going to church, not Living Hope, but my hometown had a church, but that was something that we just did once every week. And as kids, the reason why we did it was because mom and dad would take us to a restaurant. It was guaranteed. If we went to church, we would go to a restaurant. So that's why I went to church. The problem with that was that we heard the stories, but we never really examined or developed any sort of a relationship with Jesus. All we knew was he fed 5,000 people, he walked on water, Peter denied him 3 times, all these stories that everybody should know, but we didn't really understand any of the why behind it. And so since I didn't have any sort of deep relationship, there was no substance to it when I got older. I started to question the whys, and I didn't feel the Bible had answers because it didn't appear to me at the time. So as I got older, my parents split up as well, and we stopped going to church altogether. So flash forward a few years to my young adult life. I've got a son, and before he came along, I remember actually having a conversation with his mother and saying, one of the things that I did right when I was younger was we went to church. So I would like us to go to church. And I remember she said very clearly, if you want to take him to church, you're going to do that alone. And then another 2 years after that, not even, I was on my own. I was now a single father, and I had moved into this city to try to make this new young family work, and it hadn't. And so I'm in a city where I don't really feel like I actually even know anyone. And the times when I can even see my son are sporadic, so I really felt completely alone. However, I wasn't really alone. There's my best friends growing up had a cousin who I'd met actually years before, who was herself in Hamilton as a single parent, and she'd actually started going to this church called Living Hope, which actually welcomed single parents. Now I didn't know, I'd heard stories that churches tend to frown on broken families, but honestly, at my church growing up, I'd never seen that. There were no broken families. So it felt very much like, okay, I guess I can take the chance. She wants to go to church, she wants me to go to church. I do know church. It won't be so bad. I just really can't let them in on the whole fact that, single parent doesn't have a family kind of a thing. So I went to church, and the craziest thing was that as soon as I walked in, a guy walked right up to me and said hi. And I remember thinking, yep, hi. And he's like, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm just here with her. And he was like, I see that. You came in together. Who are you? He actually wanted to get to know who I was. And I thought, okay, well, I might as well let him know. No problem. I don't know when I'll be back kind of a thing. But the funny thing was, the next week, I asked if we could go back. And so my now girlfriend, who became my wife, said, okay, yeah, let's go back. So we went back every week for several weeks, and then she actually had to go away to Toronto for school, so she wouldn't be back anymore. We were talking on the phone one night, and she was like, so what's your weekend look like? And I said, well, Saturday I'm going to work all day, and Sunday I want to go to church, which surprised her, surprised me, but I realized that that's where the people who want to get to know me, my friends, if you will, are. So I want to go to church, and you're not in the city, so it's becoming a thing where I'm not just going to church because I'm tagging along for the pretty girl. I'm going to church because that's where I want to be. So one of the things that I really enjoyed before I gave my life back to Christ was I really liked performing. That's where my first degree is. But once I'd gotten saved, I figured everything about my old life had done nothing for me. There had never been any success to it. So I kind of pushed all of that back and said, I'm a new creation now. All of that is dead. What I didn't know was that even when you're in your old life, God's always with you, and the gifts that you have as an individual are actually bestowed by Him. So some of that stuff, the performing, the teachable stuff, because I actually had gone through teacher training as well before I started coming to Living Hope, and it hadn't been successful. he started to pull that back, and he's like, well, listen, this is actually what I have for you. You didn't use it correctly back then. Let's use it correctly now. So I actually started to volunteer in LH Kids, the kids ministry, where I got to use my drama background and I got to use my teaching background. And professionally, those had not panned out for me at all. So I figured that there was no value to them. And obviously God is saying there's value. You have to be using it for the right thing. People sometimes ask you professionally, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And sometimes when they want to get to know your family and your plans for the future, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And some people in church would even ask me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I remember ever since I was a young adult, that question bothered me because I didn't have an answer. Like, even from my own life experience now, inside of 5 years, I have a kid, I lost that family, I started to see someone else who brought me back to church, I was a teacher, it didn't work. That's all inside of 5 years. You can't tell me that I should have had that up on the wall and been aiming for that. So I never had an answer for where you see yourself in 5 years. Well, during one of our small group sessions, somebody asked that, and because I have God's patience now, I wasn't angry. I decided just to get real quiet and see what happened, and I saw myself on the Living Hope stage with a microphone in my hand. And I thought initially, that's a very self-serving thing that just popped in my head because I was a performer before. I want to be a performer again. Stop that, that's not from God. But it came up again. So I hadn't told anybody about it, and it came up again when we did it a couple of months later, and again after that. Maybe 2 years later, all of the volunteer teams were having a celebration, and the leadership team actually asked me if I wanted to participate in a lip sync battle. So the lip sync battle actually happened on the Living Hope stage, and they put a microphone in your hand. I mean, it didn't actually work, but you see the imagery, that the vision. I'm on the stage with a microphone in my hand. And then the men's ministry and the kids ministry, whenever they would have events, they would ask me if I wanted to participate, in which case they would put me back on stage with a microphone in my hand. So it was just a really awesome way that God said, you didn't used to have an answer, and now I've given you one. If you're a Christian, persecution is coming. You can count on that, and my family is a real testament to that. There was a family crisis which was taking shape so that we actually wouldn't be able to be all together in church, and it became a legal battle that we had to undertake. And then we had to check our conviction. Like, is this something that is so important to us that we may need to invest thousands of dollars and lots of time and stress? And so we prayed on that. We got a lot of people together to help us out, give us these perspectives. And what we ultimately decided was, it's important enough. It's more important to us that we are there as a family in church than maybe we compromise. Because maybe if we compromise on this one, maybe the fight's over and maybe it's not. Either way, I felt like we would have lost more than we had gained if we had fought and been able to come to church as a family. So we fought, and even in the midst of that, we had to check our conviction every step of the way because the bills were piling up month to month. But God walks us through that. He was with us in that. Financially, He helped us out so many times, just hidden blessings where you wouldn't expect them. The lawyer would drop fees every so often just because she understood what we were fighting for. And ultimately, I can't speak to everyone's condition, but our situation ended up coming out okay. And Easter, we were actually, of the very next year, we were all together as a family in church. So convictions have to be aligned with God's will, and then He can come through when you don't think He's gonna, and He can actually turn even bad things to good. That's my story. Obviously, I'm still there at Living Hope. You can see me in the kids ministry, you can see me in the men's ministry, and I just have a lot of really great ways that God has come through for me in my life. Your circumstances don't define you. What happens is your resolve can actually be a testament to God's goodness, and that's how God's changed me.